So we're really happy that you stuck around for our panel sessions this morning. This one is called Water Priorities for Your Home. We invite you to ask questions of the panelists. I'll get everything started and going to get you thinking. There are 2 microphones set up in the room, so if you make your way towards those microphones to ask questions of the panelists, we'll really very much appreciate that. This morning, I have with me Dave Bracciano, Tampa Bay Water. Seated next to him is Doris Heitzmann. We've all been introduced to Dr. Languell this morning. Next to Dr. Languell is Mikle Gordon. He is with Duke Energy. And next to Mikle is Jeremiah Rohr. So if you would, each of you, tell us a little bit about what your company is doing to promote water conservation education. We're Floridians. We're all surrounded by water. We saw a lot from Dr. Languell about water conservation fixtures. So what are each of you doing in terms of promoting water conservation and water education for our homeowners in the Tampa Bay area? And we'll start with Dave.
Okay. Tampa Bay Water is a wholesale supplier of water. So if most of you live in Pinellas County, then your water for Pinellas County comes from Tampa Bay Water, who provides the supply. We supply water to 6 local governments: Pinellas County, City of St. Petersburg, City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, Pasco County, and Newport Richey. We actually fund the Florida Friendly Landscape Program that Doris is probably going to talk about a little bit. So we've been doing that since the mid-1990s. Our agency actually has spent a lot of time evaluating the effectiveness of various conservation programs and building those into our demand forecast for the region. So we actually go out and spend time and money to actually determine how much water products use, how they affect demands in the region, and then how that would affect our forecasting in the future. And we're now integrating that passive conservation, which is changes through technology, into our forecast. It's one of the basic things we do that's pretty new in the United States. We also have developed a number of programs, including the WaterWise Awards, which is a program that recognizes water efficiency in landscapes. I'm involved in the Florida Water Star program as a technical resource for them. I actually sat and chaired the U.S. Greenbelt Council's lead program's Water Efficiency Technical Advisory Group that actually came up with new criteria for the next version. And we have a number of resources that are being used by local governments, including a guide on micro-irrigation. We have a rainwater harvesting manual on our site that actually identifies sizes and costs for rainwater harvesting. So I think that's going to kind of touch on things a little bit.
I work out of Extension. I work with the Florida Friendly Landscaping Program, and I go out to the communities and educate community associations and homeowners on the Florida Friendly Landscaping principles. The focus is water conservation, but also reduction of polluted stormwater runoff. But we are striving for quantifiable results, which is of course easiest with homeowners using potable or county water. And this is what the focus really is at this time. And the results really are great because people buy more and more into landscapes that are sustainable and that use less energy, less water, and also less maintenance. And that's pretty much it. I'm doing this for 8 years, almost 8 years, and got funded through grants. And this year around, it's Tampa Bay Water. They're very supportive in the program. They know the program very well. So I think Dave could respond to the questions in landscaping as well. He's pretty much very familiar with the program. And that's about it.
With respect to water efficiency, and so we saw from those pie charts, the biggest use of water is the landscape. And you have tons of resources here to access with respect to modifying landscape. We always see issues with the irrigation systems, meaning they are set to run incorrectly, and sprinklers may not be correct. Inside homes, it's the no-brainer things of stopping the leaks And in addition to that, it's possibly changing your faucets to low-flow faucets, changing your shower head to low-flow shower heads, changing your toilets over to low-flow toilets. So the education component is what we focus in on. We don't tell people to go out and buy a new washing machine just to save energy or save water. We like people to use their equipment until it breaks. And when it breaks, then of course replace it with something efficient. But it's not necessarily sustainable to throw out something that's already working. We are lucky in that we have readily available, fairly affordable resources of both water and energy. And so we are blessed to live in a country where that is the case, but we can all do our part to save those resources. So we really focus on education, and then we look at return on investment. We really want people to make informed decisions and smart decisions about what to do with their limited resources, which in our instance could be money.
I'm Michael Gordon with Duke Energy. One thing that we look at in terms of energy efficiency, it's part of our balanced solution portfolio. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that applies to water conservation. Some of the things that we look at in terms of energy conservation, we come out and we do a walk-through energy check, and I'll give an example of that walk-through energy check. We go into your attic, we look at your insulation, we'll look at your ductwork, and then we'll walk through the home, we'll look at your faucets. We'll also look at your shower heads and also outside spigots. Anytime that we detect that where there is maybe a leak out there, so we're going to make those recommendations. Also, you've heard from the panelists that low-flow shower heads and also aerators on your faucets. So those are things that we're going to point out as a part of our recommendation to help reduce water usage. Also, things that are indirectly related will be hot water. We think about it in terms of showers. We also make recommendations on reducing your water temperature of your showers. Looking at using dishwashers, we also make recommendations as a result of what should you use, how you should dry them. But those things are indirectly related to water and reduction of water usage. So we look at it from a holistic approach in terms of energy conservation. But on the bottom line, I think there are some indirect relationships that happen as a result of the recommendations in terms of water usage.
It's kind of interesting. They have a solar contractor up here talking about water, but water does apply to the energy mix. One of the things that a lot of people probably don't realize is that electric generation through coal fire and nuclear power plants uses a huge amount of water in the state. And they are a huge consumer of our domestic water supplies because most electric generation is done through heating water into steam and turning turbines and that kind of thing to create our electricity. So when we start pulling demand off those facilities, the solar does not consume those type of resources. And so we're looking at that on a regular basis. And also, when you start looking at your own consumption and on energy and all that kind of stuff, the water kind of falls into that line, and you start thinking about your consumption of resources. And, I'd like to say, and I'd like to promote the WaterWise Award. My wife is an award winner, and I would certainly suggest anybody to get involved in that program. There's great information out there, and she had a wonderful time winning that award, and I would compliment you guys for putting that out there.
Okay, so Doris, a question for you. How can homeowners save water and reduce costs by using an automatic irrigation system?
To have an irrigation system does not mean necessarily that you are wasting water. If it is designed properly, if it is maintained, and if it is used in the right places. In many ways, you can really use a different system other than the high volume or the overhead irrigation. Many landscaped areas that are non-turf can be irrigated or watered with micro-irrigation, also called low-volume irrigation. That's really a good use of irrigation. Some areas, if you, let's say, plant something and you get the plants established, let's say with micro-irrigation, landscape areas, non-turf, You can really, if these plants are established and drought tolerant, you can remove or turn off the micro-irrigation even. So making good use of irrigation systems means a good design and maintenance, proper maintenance.
Thank you, Doris. We've been hearing a lot about WaterWise and the EPA Water Sense. Dr. Languell, you've been doing a lot of work with certification programs. Could you probably explain for our audience the differences between the Florida Water and the EPA program and how some of those requirements vary in terms of fixtures?
So in Florida, we have the Water Star program, which is out of St. John's, and it's also associated with Extension. So it's the Water Management District and Extension. So I think you probably have all that info up on your web or linked to it. And the Water Star program talks about both interior and exterior water use, as does Water Sense. But Water Sense is a national program. So as you know, the issues that we have in Florida aren't necessarily the same as what everyone has in the nation. So they're both great resources, and Water Sense labels will help you identify water conserving faucets and fixtures because it's a national label. So if you're going to do it yourself and change out a faucet or a fixture, look for that label. You know then it is guaranteed it's going to use less water. The Water Star program, again, gives you opportunities and ideas to conserve water, to reduce how much you're using, also to look at both inside and outside the house. So the resources available, and that was the note that I written down, are go to the Water Sense website and go to the Water Star website, and they will give you great information and additional resources, and I think we can probably provide those links as well.
Dave, I'm going to ask you a question about rates and conservation behaviors. We know that homeowners are conserving more. Does this impact water rates? Will it impact water rates? And how do you plan for and address water supply in our region at Tampa Bay Water as it relates to conservation and increases?
So there's one thing that I want to help clarify, because there has been this, I would say, somewhat of a misnomer that the conservation has affected the rates in the region or in the United States. The Water Research Foundation is currently conducting a study to determine what the impacts of the recession and the slow economic recovery is on water consumption. And as you know, if you have less money, you're going to spend less money on discretional water use, like outdoor water use. So I just wanted to clarify that is not always the case. So what Tampa Bay Water does in our forecasting of demands is we take into account the amount of conservation that's occurred already in the region, and now we are actually forecasting through market penetration studies that we're doing how much change in products are going to occur over the planning horizon. So we've actually anticipated that. I will say that some of the studies that have come out, I think the University of Louisville had done one on some research in Louisville, for example, and they actually lost a lot of industrial consumption in Louisville, and so there has been this kind of this focus on reductions in water use that are impacting rates. And so what we recommend to local governments, I sit on the AWWA Water Conservation Division as well, is that when a utility are developing their rates or modifying their water rates, that their fixed and variable costs need to be evaluated, and they need to evaluate and build into their rates this impact associated with passive conservation, which is the change out of products. So we already do that. You know, we sell water to 6 local governments, and we update our demand forecasts yearly, and we have a long-term demand forecast model that allows us to build in the cost of the water and the relationship between the cost and how much water people will use. So I think in our region, we've already anticipated that, and now we're building this future forecast with additional conservation that we pretty much are assured is going to happen.
Ma'am, would you make your way to the microphone right there next to you? There's one right there.
I have hopefully a simple question. We see a lot of things that are like organic and natural in this. Is there something like energy-wise, like a symbol that we could go by instead of just reading what's on the shelves and believing what they say?
So let me just, Jennifer mentioned this, and I think the important thing for you to recognize is the Water Sense labeled products. And she mentioned that along with the programs. But WaterSense labeled products are actually certified, third-party independent certified to meet certain criteria. For example, if you buy a high-efficiency shower head that is WaterSense certified, it's actually, we spent about 3 years in a harmonization study to actually determine what the mechanism was to make sure that those shower heads actually washed your hair. And so if you look for a WaterSense labeled product, you know that they've been tested and there's an independent third-party certification that the products actually work. So when you go out there, you go to Lowe's, you go to Home Depot, look for the WaterSense label. You know that the products have been tested and will meet certain reliability and durability requirements.
And I'll just mention, in addition to the shower heads and making sure that when you lather up your hair, you can actually get the soap out of it, which I may find is an issue. You may not find is an issue. But the WaterSense label also holds through for toilets as well. And a lot of the fear factor with the low flow toilets was they're not going to work. I have to flush it twice. Well, toilets have something called a MAP rating, which tells you the performance of the toilet. So the higher the MAP rating, the better. And WaterSense toilets are also tested for that. They have to have a minimum MAP rating, a minimum performance. So you know if you buy one of those toilets, it will work with a single flush as well. So I just add that because there's that fear factor
that was the first
with
product.
Toilets. So.
Okay, we have a question from the audience.
My question is for Mr. Gordon with Duke Energy. The walkthrough energy check, is that possible for condominiums and HOAs too? If we, assuming we can organize the owners as we do when we have the termite testing and so forth, and they're there and they're ready, would Duke be willing to do that on a larger scale?
Great question. We have what we call our event marketing team, which is responsible for going out and doing presentations to HOAs as well as communities. So to that, yes, that is available. One of the things that we want to focus on with our customers, though, is to introduce, our walkthrough energy check so that we can help identify ways to help that customer save energy. But the most important part of that is that if we do identify opportunities, our goal is also to be able to tell you about our incentives and rebates that we offer to help you move forward with completing that measure. So we do offer incentive and rebates, and I think that's a part of the second panel discussion. So we'll get a little more into detail into that, but great question.
I was wondering about the reclaimed water system that they have in St. Pete. I've not heard any talk of that. Is that still valuable? Are they still using that? And
so your question is if the reclaimed water system is still going and up and
yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Can they still be used by, like, if you're not set up for it? How do you go about getting set up for it?
If in your area, your neighborhood, if the lines are already in the ground, in the street, then you can get hooked up. But you would need to get with your with the water department at the St. Pete Water Resources Department in St. Petersburg and contact them and ask if there's availability in your neighborhood and for your house. If you provide your street number and your address, they should be able to tell you.
They are not expanding that system. It's pretty much, they have it built out, and so if it's not in your neighborhood, they're not going to bring it into your neighborhood.
Okay.
And also, just for everybody's clarification, you're talking just about St. Petersburg or
Yes.
the rest of the county? What would the answer be for the rest of the county?
Same situation. The system is not going to be expanded at this time, but again, I always encourage my homeowners and associations I'm working with to check. Sometimes it's already in the ground, but you need to get it connected. You need to get your own landscape, your own irrigation system connected. So I would always check with either Pinellas County Utilities or the City of St. Pete and see if it is already there and available for you.
Great answer. Thank you, Doris. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question from the audience?
I have a really large swimming pool, and I think it's eating up a lot of electricity, even though I have solar heat in it. It's running that crawler. I was wondering about running that at night when the rates are lower. Would it be worth it in savings?
First of all, you're on a residential rate, so there is not a time of use rate associated with it. So whether you're running the daytime or night, it's going to still be the same cost. But here's where I would recommend in terms of settings of water heat. I mean, you look at pool pumps. One thing we recommend is to look at your timer. We normally recommend between 6 to 8 hours a day during the summertime, because typically that's when you think about it. We're in Florida. We're going to use that probably more often. Wintertime, we recommend going to 4 to 6 hours a day, depending on the size of that pool pump. It could be roughly about 700 watts to maybe 1 kW. So you're probably spending anywhere between maybe $30 to $35 a month on your pool cost. So again, just recommend looking at the timer, looking at your settings, making those adjustments during the summertime and then during the fall time.
Thank you.
I'd also like to point out that a lot of your equipment can also be Energy Star type of things. So look at your pumps. They have variable speed pumps now and induction type pumps that use a great deal less energy than the older equipment.
My pump wasn't even bad, and I just had one of those installed.
But you will see it's just like the CFL light bulbs. You know, they just use that much less electricity.
And I'll just mention real quick, on the zero energy home that we showed you in Treasure Island, there is a pool. So if you can imagine, you have a load associated with that pool, which is a constant load. And what we found was it was very specific to the run times. And it was also not only the run times, it was the percentage that the pumps were running at. So the variable speed absolutely will help, but the run times, the pool people tend to want you to run it more than it has to be run. So that's a personal experience thing that you can ratchet that down depending on use of the pool. So just keep that in mind. That's the big energy draw that we saw because it actually is you guys monitoring on 15-minute intervals the zero energy home. So we were able to see exactly how much of the draw that pool was taking.
Go ahead, sir.
I think my question's probably for Doris or maybe for David. Water conservation and ground cover. I'm trying to think of ways to get rid of the curse of grass and not use grass and use something that needs much less water, but also something that doesn't grow very tall, and also something that I don't have to mow. So, can you come up with, and is there such a thing as a good ground cover that doesn't need to be mowed, it's short as grass, not something that's growing up 5, 6 or whatever inches and stuff, but something that's very, very low and would make a great ground cover. I ran into somebody who had something I thought was fantastic, and he told me it was jasmine.
Yeah, the jasmine, I mean, there are many great ground covers available. It depends on your situation, if you have shade or sun or how large the area is and so forth. And I'd be happy to provide you with a plant guide after the panel here. There is really a selection out there, and I really don't like to say this exactly is the ground cover that's good for you because I don't know your circumstances. But I encourage you to look into using a ground cover, and if you use, again, a micro-irrigation system, a drip line, and snake this through the new landscape, around the plants, get it established and remove it maybe even after that. And if you go for something, let's say, such as the Asiatic jasmine, you don't have to mow that. It can grow up to 1.5 to 2 feet. You can mow it if you want to keep it a little lower, maybe once or twice a year. And if you don't mow it and you accept the 1.5 to 2 feet height, just let it grow.
So I'll just say that I have Asiatic jasmine in a large bed in my yard, and I do mow it twice a year, and also a perennial peanut as a ground cover along the median strip.
Oh. Yeah,
and I mow that about once a year as well.
Once a year.
Yeah.
There's also one for full sun. If you have a full sun location, there's a really great ground cover. That's a native. It's called sunshine mimosa or Mimosa strigolosa, which sounds almost like a disease. But it's really a wonderful ground cover. It's established in no time. It really takes off like crazy, and it covers with a few plants. You cover large areas. But that only works in full sun. Sunshine mimosa.
And I would just mention, because we were talking offline up here, sunshine or sunrise mimosa. From a distance, it looks like grass. So if you're far enough away, it gives you that really thick green visual effect, and it only gets so tall. So that may be, if you have full sun, an option. But there are tons of plants out there, and these are your go-to folks for that stuff. Absolutely.
Okay, ma'am, go ahead and ask your question.
I have a tankless water heater that we just heard about. You need to how do you manage, like if you do a lower setting, like lower flow, it will not trigger the heat the how do you call the gas to run the heater warm up the water. So how do I manage that? I mean, like it's just you need to have a gas out really to fill the hot water because it's tankless.
A tankless hot water heater?
Yes.
And the way the tankless hot water heaters work is that they sense the flow of the water coming through them, and then they turn on. Right. And so that's either an adjustment inside of the tankless hot water heater, or you have to turn the water on really fast at first to get it running, and then cut it back.
So it's not really saving. I mean, like, how the way I look at it, because you want it low flow, but yeah, this is the water have to come out so strong. Any retrofit or anything that I can?
It should be a setting in the piece of equipment. So whoever installed it might have to modify that setting. But I had tankless at my house, and everything was low flow at my house, and we did not run into issues. But when it was installed, I made it very clear that that was my situation. Also, they're sized, the tankless hot water heaters are sized based on your flow rate. So it may be something where the flow rate that you're sized for is too high for your house. So, but that's the manufacturer or someone who's qualified to adjust that system. There should be a setting that they can modify inside that system. Hopefully it's still an appropriate size for your flow rate and it's not too oversized.
Okay, is it the one that you have is electric?
The one that I had was electric. Did you have gas? Yeah. A gas tankless? And the gas tankless are way more efficient than the electric, but these guys just love us to death when we fire up those electric hot water systems. But still, the gas actually has a lot more variability than the electric do. So there should be a quick adjustment that they can make, but it's going to be internal to your system.
Hello. Mr. Bracciano, I'm not sure if this is directly for you or someone else on the panel, but y'all talk that, everyone talks about getting the low-lying fruit, and with water conservation and irrigation being the place where we utilize most of our water, are there any incentives or anything that maybe the powers that be would do for timers on irrigation systems in neighborhoods? I can point the finger at myself a long time ago, not knowing to use a timer, but, I run around neighborhoods after rainstorms sometimes, and everyone's got their sprinkler system going. Or sometimes, they're hitting out into the streets instead of on the grass, and things like that. That's the low-lying fruit that's wasting a lot of our water. So is there any incentives for going into the neighborhoods and giving them the timers or anything going on to help that low-lying fruit?
So let me just provide a little bit of a clarification on outdoor use, potable outdoor use in the region first. The numbers are large nationally, but in our region, potable use is probably about 20 to 25% of our water use because of the successful reclaimed water programs that have offset that. Pinellas County has over 11,000 connections. St. Pete has about 9,000 connections. So there's considerably less water. Regarding incentives, our member governments are the ones who actively implement programs. Unfortunately, in Pinellas County, there is not an irrigation evaluation program. So, for example, in Hillsborough County and in the city of Tampa, they actually will go out and do an evaluation on your irrigation system and determine where the problems are. I think that the technology that's out there that you're describing, the controller, is probably not the place where there would be a change made. A change would probably be made based upon some research from the University of Florida, probably to installation of a soil moisture sensor. They're now considered a rain shutoff device. Rain shutoff devices that are required by law are not that reliable. They don't actually save that much water. So I would go back to the local government and suggest that they might consider providing incentives for soil moisture sensors installation It hasn't been implemented in this region yet, but obviously it's something that our member government should evaluate. We did do that evaluation in our demand management plan update. It was rather cost effective for high water users to install those with a rebate, but they haven't been implemented yet. So it's really a question of whether a local government will provide the incentive for that. Generally, our member government's demands have been rather flat, particularly in Pinellas and in the city of St. Petersburg. So I wouldn't expect them to provide the incentive, unfortunately.
And I just want to mention, I think part of what I heard was it drives me nuts to drive around and see a master plan community wasting water during a rainstorm. Was that part of what I heard? And so a lot of that has to do with education. So it could be that their timers aren't set correctly, that their shut-off devices aren't set correctly, and that may be an HOA, it may be a management company, and it goes back to, are we getting the information to the correct people to properly set the timers? The other issue, and I don't know if you do it in Pinellas County or in Hillsborough County, but down further south, when we have rainstorms, if we're on reclaimed water, you will sometimes see the irrigation going because we need to evacuate the storage ponds. So we need to use some of that water and redisperse it over a large surface area so that it can percolate down, because our surface water is going to fill that pond. So sometimes when you see irrigation going while it's raining, it's actually a distribution engineering problem that we're solving so that our collection system continues to function correctly. So I'm not saying that's the circumstance you're running into, but just keep in mind that sometimes there's a reason to be watering during a rainstorm, and it has to do with distribution of water for collection and percolation reasons. But I feel it's probably an education thing. When it's running, if I see my neighbor, I'm personally, if you have potable, don't irrigate. If that's your only choice, that's just my belief. But the reality is there are options out there, efficient options out there. But I don't know that you or the local governments or the extension offices have resources to be able to go out and educate, because that takes time and money. And so that's one of the challenges I think we face.
That is what I do.
That's what Doris does. Yeah.
You can't get to everyone.
That's the problem. There's lots of ground to cover, but I go out to communities, and if there is any option, any possibility to educate, I invite everybody. And if there is, let's say, we can form groups, and that's what we do in my neighborhood association in St. Pete. Our president sends around a letter and says restrictions have changed, and are there neighbors who need help to reset the time clock? And we do go out and help. So something like this also would really work, kind of a grassroots movement that we really educate each other and help each other, as of educating people about what is the irrigation system doing and how can we make it more sufficient, and how can we turn off and turn on and reset the time clock. So, but I'm here to do that, and when you know somebody, or if you know an association, a community who is willing and to listen, I'd be happy to come out and talk, and then maybe even individually go out and help people.
Just as a follow-up to that, we did actually do some research on water use in the region and determined that as irrigation systems become more automated, that people actually use more water with automatic irrigation systems, and probably because they just let the system run during the year. They think the rain sensor is going to work. And so that was kind of an interesting issue, that increased automation actually led to more water use. And so I assume that probably most people in the room here, if they do have an automatic system, they turn it off in the summer. That increased automation and increased use is probably possible because rain sensors actually don't mimic the water use requirements of the plants. A soil moisture sensor would do that a little bit well. Theoretical requirements for water use are theoretical in nature, and so they might generally overwater. My system, I have an automatic system, but it's manual, and I have it off most of the year. So I think that if you have high water users in your neighborhood, I think you're probably going to see Doris.
Well, thank you, everybody, for the great questions from the audience. We're running out of time. We have another panel on energy, so we want to give our panelists a round of applause.